It's exactly 3 minutes past the hour of 7 a.m. and good morning. Welcome to Smart Men's Business. I'm Anchu Barija. Today is the 15th, that's of November 2022, and quite it's a new day, as of course quite a lot of events are taking place in the world. At a daily basis, you wake up with a certain decision to make. Of course, basing on the decision that's taking place, basing on what is really going on. So you make the decisions based on the appropriate information that you receive from the business world, and of course that will be in position to enable you attain profitability into your business. And of course, don't forget channel 394 on Go TV, channel 372 on DSTV, and of course we shall be in position. You will be in position to catch us at whatever part of the region you will be at. Good morning, East Africa. This is SMB, and I also officially welcome you to this segment of SMB and news recap as we go through the day's previous news stories, business stories in particular, that are making headlines. And of course, to kick off the hour right now, I will start with the Uganda Bureau of Statistics joining the rest of Africa to participate in the Statistics Week. Let's take a look at what really transpired right there. I'll be returning with more highlights regarding that.
Every year, Uganda Bureau of Statistics celebrates the Africa Statistics Week every November 18th. According to Godfrey Nabongo, the Deputy Executive Director at Uganda Bureau of Statistics, agricultural statistics will garner a considerable amount of attention in order to support the objectives of sustainable development.
But when you look at it, it's relevant. Concerning agriculture, food production has an impact on general production everywhere. It is the basis for a lot of engagement in manufacturing, especially for Africa. It is a basis where many of our people are engaged on day-to-day, but also the livelihood concerning food and life is on food. So emphasis on agriculture is not by accident, it's deliberate, because people must eat. You don't have sufficient interventions to enhance agricultural production and nutrition as such, definitely you'll get a very unproductive population and poverty will keep around. So it is deliberate that agriculture must be given that emphasis, and we are glad that it's part of the theme for this time round as we celebrate.
We are doing, particularly in agriculture statistics, we are contributing to sustainable development goals, to Vision 2040, to NDP 3, and other international frameworks as mandated by us.
In financial year 2021 to 22, agriculture accounted for about 24.1% of the GDP and 33% of export earnings. The Uganda Bureau of Statistics estimates that about 70% of the Uganda's working population is employed in agriculture. Therefore, better agricultural statistics will aid in better planning. That's according to statisticians.
Have sufficient interventions to enhance agricultural production and nutrition as such, definitely you'll get a very unproductive population and poverty will keep around. So it is deliberate that agriculture must be given that emphasis, and we are glad that it's part of the theme for this time round as we celebrate.
The public has been made aware by officials from Uganda Bureau of Statistics that the population census will start in August of next year.
The Uganda Bureau of Statistics is participating in Africa Statistics Week, of course, with the topic of strengthening data systems. That's by modernizing the production of use of agricultural statistics. According to statisticians, strengthening Africa's food security, nutrition, and agricultural resilience will receive a lot of attention. So you can see that's really transparent right there as the Uganda Bureau of Statistics is joining the rest of Africa participating in the Africa Statistics Week. And of course, it kicked off yesterday, and it's going to be running this entire week till Friday. And of course, much more is anticipated, of course, to strengthen matters regarding the use of agricultural statistics. All right, now away from that, let's say to the Parliament. And of course, this time around, we are looking at the East African community. And of course, it's about something regarding the year pension payments, which are in progress of lately, because there were people that weren't entitled. There were people that were entitled to certain salaries that were not given onto them when the East African community actually split apart. The members of the former East African Corporation, that's who did not receive their money in 15 years following the fall of the East African community, to receive pension payments. That's according to the Ministry of East African Affairs. The East African Community Affairs Permanent Secretary, that's Edith Mwanje, reveals that the payments have begun and are currently being made. Let's have the details.
The struggle between Nyerere and Idi Amin made advancement of the East African community extremely difficult, and as a result, the community disintegrated in 1977. Former workers weren't compensated until 45 years later, but following a revival, the Ministry of the East African Community began compensating them for the payment of pension for 15 years. On the 9.2 billion that were handed to the ministry, according to Edith Mwanje, the permanent secretary of the East African Community, more than 450 employees of the East African Community have been paid monthly.
There was a collapse. So the people who had qualified for the pension were given pension. And we have about 450 people who, up to now, they still get their pension. They are on the payroll. I pay them every month. Now, there were those who did not cover the 10 years. What happened? They had other benefits to be paid. They consolidated what do we call the consolidation of gratuity. We consolidate and pay them.
John Molimba, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs in charge of regional cooperation, claims that the East African community could disintegrate as a result of previous wars, which is why they have developed projects aimed at fostering intergroup cooperation.
So what you're talking about are simply challenges, but the treaty for the establishment provides for frameworks of sorting out challenges. And I'm sure the process for settling some of those challenges is on. Now, some of the issues that you have raised in respect to conflicts within other member states, that could not be really within our reach. Those may not be really our preserve.
The East African Communities Treaty, which created the community, serves as the basis for its operations. After being ratified by the original three partner states, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, it was signed on November 30th, 1999, and it came into effect on July 7th, 2000. This will address some of the issues affecting the community.
About 9.2 billion cost received by the ministry to ensure that it executes the required payments of the former employees of the East African community. So that's regarding those matters right there, and definitely we hope for the best regarding that. All right, so away from that now, let's head to MPs alarmed by the perpetual borrowing. And this time around, we see that, and of course, lawmakers have encouraged government that's to cease borrowing, that's for consumption, and start borrowing for production. Let's have the details of this particular report. I'll be returning with more highlights.
According to a recent report by the Committee on the National Economy, Uganda's public debt stock rose at 22% from 50.9 trillion in the year 2019-2020 to shillings 69.5 trillion by the end of 2020-21 fiscal year. With this debt portfolio, one would expect government to cut on its borrowing, but that is not the case. Legislators have voiced their displeasure with government's ongoing borrowing, which they claim is extremely risky for the country at a time when the economy needs to revive.
It's badly traumatized right now if we talk, and as we talk. My call to government would be, let us give our attention to productive sectors, not to consumptive sectors. We are busy borrowing money. Even we have gone now to the extent of borrowing money for salaries. It shows that we have a problem before us. It is our duty as a parliament to support our government, to support the executive. We don't want to give the executive a hard time. We must work together so that we get the right solution. But our device is, can we borrow for things that can help our economy to recover?
According to the MPs, borrowing is not a bad thing, but the executive has not followed up on this money to check whether it is being used for the intended purpose. Firstly, because the distribution of the finances was not transparent, and secondly, because there was no proof that the money was used as planned.
The loans, the means of finance, which are untouchables, are the one causing the country a problem, not parliament. Over these loan requests are brought to parliament, and this is one of our cardinal laws. Now, and you know, they are talking of water. They are talking of extending the coverage of network, like the ICT one, coverage. My people in Ikiki have no network. Now you perceive, hoping this can also go as far as Ikiki, and this will touch every member of parliament, considering the road portfolio. But once it's passed, then they start speaking a different language. That's why you usually get problems. They say, you know, well, you see, you know, we need anticipate for this, what have you. They bring in a lot of English, which is not necessary. That's where, you know, that's the Coleman language.
Personally, I have a loan, but what did I get that loan for? I had a plan that in 4 years I will have completed the loan, and I had a plan for borrowing this. But when you go on a borrowing spree, where you just borrow for anything, that is where, for me, I have a problem. As a country, we have failed to prioritize what we need as a country. To tell you the truth, we would not be borrowing up to this level. But because of the high level of corruption and also failing on our priorities, we have failed to put our priorities right. That is why we borrow without ceasing. How can we possibly be borrowing even to pay salary as a country? Sincerely.
They further explained that government should take out long-term loans with terms ranging from 25 to 35 years if it wants the economy to grow, and maybe provide value for the approved loans.
The best loans. I think if this country to develop, now that the appetite of borrowing, we are dependent on loans and what have you. The loans that we must acquire must be long-term loans of 25 to 30 years. The concessional loans, those are the most friendly loans. But the loans of, say, 5, 10 years are very pressing that our country cannot manage to service them.
On the 3rd of this month, the Parliament approved a loan of 1.7 trillion shillings, despite opposition protests. Less than a week later, a Committee of National Economy received a second loan request of $200 million, which has got legislators worried. Samlanifa, SMART24 TV, Business Today.
All right, that's regarding that about the members of parliament, of course, cautioning government to borrow for production and consumption. If the economy is to recover, lawmakers have encouraged the government to cease borrowing for consumption and start borrowing for, that's production. This comes after $200 million loan request, of course, made by the parliament last week on Friday. And of course, yet on the 3rd day of this month, the parliament accepted a further loan to support the budget that's totaling 1.7 trillion. And of course, that's what really transpired right there regarding those matters. All right, now away from that, now we head to the legislation of the real estate industry. As in order to control the sector's operations, Uganda must regulate its building industry. With the help of the private sector and other stakeholders, the bill that will soon become a law will be acceptable and fulfill the expectations and specifications that's needed for the real estate industry to prosper and expand in Uganda. Ronan Ahawi with this particular report.
Affordable housing is becoming more and more popular as one of the effective solutions to housing issues throughout the sub-Saharan Africa. The segment has seen an increase in investment, but the supply has not kept up with the escalating demand. Regulating agencies, a lack of forethought and consideration, or government priorities have all contributed to the delay.
All right, sorry about that little technical error. And of course, before that, we are reviewing something regarding the real estate industry. And of course, this time around, looking at how the government is trying to regulate the industry to ensure proper operation within the country. And also, we see that there is need for the industry to prosper. That's in the long run. Let's review this report real quick. Of course, I'll be returning with more highlights.
Affordable housing is becoming more and more popular as one of the effective solutions to housing issues throughout the sub-Saharan Africa. The segment has seen an increase in investment, but the supply has not kept up with the escalating demand. Regulating agencies, a lack of forethought and consideration, or government priorities have all contributed to the delay in Uganda's case.
When it comes to planning, the ministry has actually come up with national planning guidelines.
According to Lands Minister, we have a deficit of more than 8 million housing units, and as such, real estate agents call upon government to be deliberate in their decisions.
First of all, we are just trying to see whether the government can come up with policies that promote affordability, because among the issues that prevent us from achieving the number of houses is affordability of finances. But also, like I said, we don't have the information to actually know the actual number of houses that we produce annually.
The sector has fallen victim to political beliefs, according to Association of East African Real Estate Agents, but with the passage of this law, licensing will be simple and fraud will be detected.
We find that, for example, we try to put in politics, we mix it with the development, and in the end we find that we have achieved nothing. But we are appealing to government to make sure that at least these things are implemented.
All Ugandans must be able to live in a location they can call home, regardless of their financial situation. Everybody wants to live in a nice, affordable home that is both safe and well planned. The Private Sector Foundation of Uganda has created a catalytic fund to help fulfill this ambition.
We came in to say, what can PSFU do to solve this conundrum? If they don't have finance, they can't grow. If they don't grow, we don't grow. As a country, even as a business, PSFU. So, and that gap was access to finance. So we came up with this private sector catalytic fund. So it was an idea we conceptualized. And the immediate partner actually we partnered with was Mastercard Foundation Uganda. So they've supported us to do the initial work, the initial studies, the initial framework on reframing how would it look like, this private sector catalytic fund. How would we provide capital to these businesses? What kind of businesses can even access this kind of capital, this patient capital? So we went to define the criteria. So if it's a Ugandan real estate company, for example, what is its biggest problem? Yes, it doesn't have access to finance, but why is that? It's because when it goes to a commercial bank, it can't show its cash flows. It can't basically be able to pay back within the times that the commercial bank may require. So we say that when we design ours, it has to take into the nuances that afflict our business.
Executive Director of Private Sector Foundation Uganda re-echoed that with a fast-growing population, it is imperative to plan.
Our population is fast expanding. We have a child born every 20 seconds in this country now, on average. And the need to plan how this business is going to really develop the sector is critical. Now, as PSFU, real estate and construction is an integral part. And we are looking at a situation where one of the biggest challenges has been the need to, one, create jobs, to plan for cities and municipalities and neighborhoods in their totality. But more importantly, how do we bring in the private sector to benefit? And as part of that discussion, the PSFU has set up a catalytic fund.
Is the real estate industry profitable? Is a popular question asked, and the answer is that the real estate industry has a large margin and is expanding quickly. Increasing the value of a property is one of the best strategies to increase revenue in the real estate by 70%.
And of course, that's matters regarding the regulation of the real estate sector. As we get to realize that some of the major aspects when discussing this particular law will be including, and of course, the punishments to be awarded or accorded to those that have gone against the code of conduct. Getting to understand where to report just in case of any stakeholders doesn't really fulfill the required duties. It could be a broker, it could be a real estate agent regarding those matters. And of course, those were matters that were discussed by the Minister of Lands, that's Judith Nabakova, regarding as why they are trying to implement, and of course, this bill into law. And also we see that there is a deficit of more than 8 million DATS housing units, which need to be covered up by the different stakeholders. And that's why we see the private sector participation is very important in such, of course, in such a sector to ensure its prosperity in the nation. And also seeing that quite a lot of policies that have been formulated and of course in the past, because according to a report here that's from the Ministry of Lands, more than 2,000 DATS housing units are set up annually. And of course the government has pulled up different policies and legal frameworks, that's including the National National Land Use Policy, that's 2009. And of course we see the National Land Policy 2013, that one was 2009, and now we're talking 2013. And then the National Housing Policy 2018, and we see the National Urban Policy 2016. That's to provide a conducive environment for the real estate sector to thrive in the country, Uganda. And definitely today on SMB on Ground, I'll be joined with a real estate expert, and of course it will be the particular topic of discussion on ground, seeing how best they think when this law is put into act, into use, or it's put into play. What do we anticipate? What are the anticipations? And probably if there are policies that are quite unfair for the real estate industry in this particular law, what is that should be adjusted? That and more will be coming up on SMB on Ground. All right, now away from that, now let's head to the advertising trends. Of course, points are pointing to steady growth as we see the increased penetration of internet, and of course the low cost of smart devices and the launch of the 3G and 4G in East Africa. We'll see more and more people acquiring smart devices to mainly access that social media. This brings about increment in digital advertising, which however experts say that traditional advertising can never be defeated, but rather new opportunities are brought closer. That's to young entrepreneurs. Now Mutumba with this report.
Any advertising that is produced and shown by computers, primarily using internet-based technologies, is referred to as digital advertising. It was first used in the early 2000s when the internet began to spread. Although it is much simpler to track digital advertising, experts claim that traditional advertising cannot be avoided.
Traditional advertising is not going anywhere. And when we sat in a number of meetings, because we also run around knowing that traditional advertising is dead, but it's not dead. We just have a new platform which is making diverse means of communication, because while you can miss the television in the set in your house, but you're still getting that information on your TV. You still tune into on any television network on your phone, and you're still going to reach you. So it is not dead really, but it's just bringing new opportunities. Why they are really opportunities is the young people we want to bring on. That is their thing.
Print marketing, broadcast advertisements such as radio and television commercials, and point-of-purchase promotional materials are some examples of conventional kinds of advertising. According to Annette Seba, internet advertising is making it much easier, as seen from the epidemic lockdown.
They love working in obscure places. We have young people actually. If we to get out the story of what happened during COVID, it was really interesting, and right now, even in agencies, most people work 2 days and then the other days you can work from home. You get one day, you come at the agency, have a general meeting, then the rest of the days you can work from anywhere, as long as you deliver. So this is how digital has made our work even very easy.
The Silverback Awards were presented by the Uganda Advertising Association, which is responsible for overseeing all advertising and marketing firms in the nation. The awards honor outstanding work in digital advertising, as well as in the areas of public relations, media, and creatives.
These awards have just shown that if you're creative enough, the world sees, Ugandan sees, and guys win. So the entire process has been like long, tedious. We got judges from South Africa, we got judges from Kenya, then some judges from Uganda. Okay, a lot of judges from Uganda. That blend has been good because the Ugandan judges could understand the local context, the context. Then the international judges brought the international experience because they've won international awards. The agents that have won today, you know, they are a balance of both worlds. Okay? So I am happy for the guys who won today, the TPWs, the MAD advertising. I'm happy for them.
We had amazing grades, great mentorship.
The first ever Silverback Awards placed special emphasis on succession planning, talent management, digital trends and their impact on organizations, research management, linkages and synergies, and the role of innovation in creating enduring brands. The goal of this is to encourage young people to participate more in digital trends. Naomi Mtumba, SMART24 TV, Business Today.
Now we come to the end of the SMB News Recap this morning as we look at the COP27 on climate change. As we see, the purpose of the COP27 was to carry out the goals of the COP26, which included measures for reducing carbon emissions and taking action against climate change. Additionally, it attempted to seek out and make use of the assistance and information which is offered by qualified organizations, intergovernmental entities, and non-government organizations in protecting the environment. Terrestrial ecosystems are essential in the fight against climate change because they absorb 25% of the greenhouse emissions. Let's have the details of this report.
There is no better time for Africa to unite than to end a global climate change catastrophe because it has had significant effects on the planet. Making our planet a worthwhile place to live is a goal for every person, despite the many challenges the globe faces. In order to transition to a green economy and take tangible steps towards a future with comfortable temperatures, contributions from all member parties are required to limit the increase in the average world temperature this century to 1.5 degrees Celsius per industrial levels.
We have come together to work on one of the most urgent issues faced by the planet, the issue of climate change. During this conference of parties, the United Nations, from a Convention on Climate Change, coming together during this COP27 held here in Sharm el-Sheikh, a city of peace. In fact, the first city in Egypt that has gone through the beginnings of a green transformation. And across the planet, the temperature increase of more than 1.5 degrees. Now, that is the future that meets the hopes and aspirations of all people. I should also say that we must be frank and honest. We must be aware of our capabilities and what we can do. The international community is able to achieve progress, to achieve the goals laid out in Paris. We must be inspired by the trust placed in us when we came together.
We are all affected by the climate issues, as evidenced by the rise in food insecurity, the drought, the global fires, and other effects. Since the issue of climate change affects us all, member states should pay attention and work hard to reduce global emissions in their respective countries.
Is about human security, economic security, environmental security, national security, and the very life of the planet.
The majority of conflicts in the world are related to climate change. Human activity is what drives the globe. Thus, people should support climate change, and economies should push for the use of renewable resources because they at least preserve the environment.
Human activity is the cause of the climate problem, so human action must be the solution. Action to re-establish ambition and action to rebuild trust, especially between North and South. The science is clear. Any hope of limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees means achieving global net zero emissions by 2050. But that 1.5 degree goal is on life support and the machines are rattling. We are getting dangerously close to the point of no return. And to avoid that dire fate, all G20 countries must accelerate their transition now in these decades. Developed countries must take the lead, but emerging economies are also critical to bending the global emissions curve. Last year in Glasgow, I called for coalitions of support for high-emitting emerging economies to accelerate the transition from coal towards renewables. We are making progress with the Just Energy Transition partnerships, but much more is needed. And that is why at the beginning of COP27, I'm calling for a historic pact between developed and developing economies, and especially developed and emerging economies, a climate solidarity pact.
The execution of every decision taken during the meeting is the goal of COP27. To accomplish all the Paris Treaty goals that have been discussed, countries should adapt to improve finance, which will improve the delivery of transparency principles with specific plans.
We must demonstrate this transformational shift to implementation, putting negotiations into concrete actions. Every corner of human activity must align with our Paris commitment of pursuing efforts to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. Let's be encouraged by the strides that certain sectors are making on this, and let's look closer at how the global financial architecture can be made fit for purpose in line with the Paris commitments. The second line of action, we must cement progress on these critical work streams: mitigation, adaptation, finance, and crucially, loss and damage. We need to enable enhanced finance to flow to addressing impacts. What is said in these negotiating rooms has to be reflected in the urgency of what is happening outside.
It's time for leaders to prioritize minimizing loss and harm in negotiations. It's time to admit that the most vulnerable groups still require additional funding on top of what has been already pledged. Our leaders need to get up and start defending the environment.
COP27 has been nicknamed the African COP. If COP27 is to truly deliver, we must face some truth. Some truth that we have faced decades of inaction from our leaders. Some truth that the world is in a state of emergency because of fossil fuels. Some truth that Africa contributes less than 4% of the carbon emissions, but we suffer the most. The future is at stake, mostly young children. We're not sure whether we are heard when we speak or we're just ignored. But let the African COP be a different COP. Let the African COP listen to the biggest stakeholders. Let the African COP be an action COP.
The transitional shift to implementation, progress on critical work streams, delivery of transparency and accountability will be achieved through a nexus connection adaptation, resilience, mitigation, and access to innovation solutions and small-scale technologies to improve the quality of life of Africa's communities by access to basic services and economic opportunities. Martha Nimsima, SMART24 TV, Business Today.
It's exactly 38 minutes past the hour of 7 a.m. and at this particular time, let's get into a short commercial break. And of course, we'll return with more business insights. Good morning.